Yeah, so you walk past the coffee shop, there's the sense contact with the smell of the coffee, and maybe a feeling of pleasure if you're a coffee drinker. Yeah. Or the person walks into the room that you had an awkward encounter with last week, and it sort of triggers a feeling of discomfort or displeasure. Yeah. Do you see that? So those two are kind of in relationship to each other. Yeah. And I think what we can tend to assume or think is that that's basically the relationship. Yeah. Some things are just pleasant and some things are just painful. And that's the way it is. Yeah. And the pleasure and pain is inherent in the thing. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah. That person just is pain. Yeah. Coffee is just pleasure. Yeah. It's a kind of one-on-one relationship. But of course, if you think about it for very long, you realise it's quite different. Yeah. So I'm going to give a couple of examples. Yeah, maybe slightly silly examples, but there we go. So imagine it's a lovely, lovely day. One of the last days of summer. It's sunny, and you're sitting in your friend's garden in the sunshine. Just very relaxed, very lovely. And your friend comes out of the house, and they're bringing you a bowl of your favourite ice cream. Yeah, so you see this ice cream coming towards you, sense contact, and you think, it's a kind of desire for the ice cream. And so there's a feeling of pleasure, isn't there? It's a feeling of pleasure, a feeling of anticipation. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So ice cream, pleasure. Yeah. Imagine though another situation where on your way to your friend's house, because it was on the way, you just happened to pop into your mum's to check she was all right, just for 15 minutes. But while you were there, she gave you a rather large bowl of ice cream. And because it was your mum, you felt like you needed to eat the ice cream, so you've quite quickly eaten this ice cream, and there it is in your belly. And then you go to your friend's house, and they bring you another bowl of ice cream. Yeah, and you're sort of, you can already feel like you've had too much sugar. You feel a little bit bloated, and out comes the bowl of ice cream, exactly the same sense contact, but this time, oh, yeah, there's not a feeling of pleasure. There's a feeling of like, ugh, yeah. It's the same stimulus, different feeling, yeah. And the reason is, of course, because in one case there was the desire for the ice cream, and in the other case your body is saying, no more ice cream. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. So the kind of desire affects the feeling. Yeah, it's not a one-on-one relationship between these two. It's more of a kind of three-way relationship. Does that make sense? Yeah. To give another example, say you're sitting in that garden on a lovely summer's day, last sunny day of summer. It's a Sunday afternoon, and then a neighbour nearby starts using a chainsaw. This is kind of whine, the chainsaw, yeah. And you really don't like it. How could they be so inconsiderate? And it just feels painful. It's a horrible noise. It's painful. Yeah. So there's a kind of sense contact. There's a sound, and it feels painful. You can tend to think, very easily think, that horribleness and painfulness is inherent sound. But imagine another situation where in your garden a tree has fallen down, and it's fallen across your neighbour's driveway, blocked their car. And it's also fallen slightly over the pavement. So the neighbour's unhappy with you, and the council is saying you need to sort out that tree. And you've rung round various tree surgeons, and there's no one sort of free to come and sort it out. And finally you found someone, and they said they're coming at a certain time, and they haven't arrived, and you're kind of anxious about it. Then you hear the sound of a chainsaw outside. Yeah, and you realise they've arrived and they're getting on with the job. Yeah. Probably almost feels pleasant. Yeah. Probably the feeling will be, do you see what I mean? It's actually the same sound. It's the same sense contact, but it gives rise to a totally different feeling. Yeah. Because again, in one case there was aversion, and in the other case there was a kind of desire for this thing to happen. Yeah. So our feelings are giving us information it's important to be aware of our feelings. Yeah. It's important to sort of turn towards our feelings. But our feelings are giving us information. But we tend to think they're just giving us information about this. Yeah. But they're actually giving us information in a more complex way. Does that make sense? They're giving us information about something that we're coming into contact with, but they're also giving us information about our relationship with that something. Yeah. Whether we want it or don't want it, or whether we're sort of neutral towards it.
I was just going to ask that. So there's more than two choices, right?
Yeah. And, the way we don't have to do craving or aversion, which I'll get to later. Yeah, but if we do go into craving or aversion, what that tends to do is amplify everything. Yeah. So in the chainsaw example, there's aversion. How dare they? How can they be so inconsiderate? The sound feels more unpleasant, doesn't it? Can you kind of relate to it? That's what the mind does when it wants something or doesn't want something. In the mind is almost like designed to then really kind of zoom in on that thing. Yeah. Which in certain situations of danger or opportunity might be really helpful. But in certain situations, it's just perverse. There's something you don't like, and your mind just obsesses about it, and it becomes more and more painful. Yeah. Or your mind really wants something, and you can't get it out of your mind. It just goes round and round and round, and the feeling and almost sort of sense contact is amplified and heightened. Yeah. And the sense of me wanting that thing or not wanting that thing is amplified. You kind of get that. You feel kind of tight. You feel more fixed and brittle and solid. There's me and there's that thing. Yeah. There's me and there's that thing. Yeah. Everything gets heightened. Yeah. That's what the mind does because of this kind of relationship that mutually kind of. Yeah. So that's the two lessons that I want to draw out of this model. So one is that feelings aren't just telling us about the thing, they're telling us about our relationship with the thing. Yeah. And so we need to learn to read our feelings wisely. Yeah. Not just take them as face value, but kind of look a little bit deeper. What's going on? Yeah. That feeling is partly it's partly arising out of my response to something. Yeah. So reading feelings in that kind of skillful way. And then, noticing how craving and aversion amplify, they exaggerate, they make things seem kind of bigger in the mind. Yeah. And conversely, if we can sort of let go, kind of soften, relax, turn towards the feelings with kindness, be with the feelings, but not react, it tends to de-amplify. Maybe not completely, maybe not 100%, but tends to de-amplify. So if we've got physical pain, we get into aversion, body tenses up, mind tenses up, it tends to feel worse. Yeah. If we can relax, it will soften to some degree. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the basis of the whole kind of mindfulness for pain relief approach, isn't it? Yeah. You can see that in this model. Yeah. I mean, to give another example, say somehow the door's been left open and a dog comes wandering into the shrine room, and it's an Alsatian dog, and there it is with its big pink tongue hanging out and its tail's wagging. It comes trotting in, looking pleased with itself and sniffing around. And when I was young, I got bitten by an Alsatian dog. Yeah. So sense contact, immediately a feeling of discomfort. Yeah. Quite understandable. I can't help that. It's just my condition. Yeah. Feeling of discomfort. Yeah. You, on the other hand, your family had the loveliest Alsatian when you were a child. You see the dog coming, same sense contact, feeling of delight. Yeah. So I'm getting into aversion, like, who let that dog in here? And you're going, oh, how you dog, yeah. And again, all that will kind of amplify what's going on. Yeah. And if I get into that reaction, partly it amplifies it now, and partly what it does is next time I see a dog, I have the same reaction all over again. There'll be the same kind of feeling. Yeah. Just sort of repeating something in a kind of cyclic kind of way. Whereas if I can stop, I can be aware, turn towards my feelings with kindness and just acknowledge I'm feeling uncomfortable. That's because of what happened in the past. But everyone else seems fine and the dog's wagging its tail. So I just try and relax and ask someone if they could get the dog out. You see what I mean? There's a choice, yeah? And if I can make a kind of more aware, creative choice, it's likely that next time a situation like that arises, I won't have such a strong feeling response. I meet a dog and it's a little bit uncomfortable, but I'm more able to stay with it. Do you see what I mean? Yeah.
Are you saying that if you're just aware of your response to a particular situation, like the aversion, just being aware of it helps you to deal with it? Is that what you're saying?
Even just awareness alone is something which is transformative about awareness.
Even if you've had trauma in your life before?
Yeah, well, obviously, if it was a very strong trauma, it may not be that easy. It might take a long, long time.
Yeah.
But just turning towards your experience. We're going to explore this more in the next couple of weeks. But just being with your experience and lots of kindness, it just stops the reaction happening.
Right.
And it allows a space where a more considered response can arise. So rather than an immediate triggered reaction, there's a more spacious response.
Are you suggesting you employ emotional intelligence?
Yeah.
So you deal with your emotions more intelligently?
Yeah, in a way that's what we're talking about, isn't it? So I'm saying feelings aren't just about that. They're about both. And in a way, you could say that's emotional intelligence.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So a kind of softening, turning towards kindness will tend to slow everything down, opening everything up and allow change, allow transformation. To say a couple more things and then we'll go into a bit more discussion. One way you might look at this is from an evolutionary perspective. Yeah. So you might kind of take an evolutionary perspective that life and animals have in a way evolved to do this because it had an evolutionary advantage. It's like that the brains, the minds of animals and human beings have been wired to kind of react in that kind of way, to spot opportunity and get really kind of hooked on it, and it becomes really big in the mind so they don't miss that opportunity, or to spot threat and to get really obsessed. Yeah, we're kind of wired for that from an evolutionary perspective. So it probably had an evolutionary advantage at some point. But can you see, it also feels like a trap. We're just sort of trapped in our own minds' reactions to things. And sometimes it's so counterproductive and not helpful anymore. Yeah. So what we're trying to do with Buddhism is use the awareness of our mind, the natural awareness of our minds, in a way to go beyond that basic condition, in a way to kind of grow into an even more sort of self-aware human state. Yeah. You could call that a kind of conscious evolution, kind of further evolution of the human mind into something much more aware, where you can see, if I do this, this happens. If I do this, this happens. Actually, I'd rather this. Yeah, you can see how it all works, and you can start to choose a more kind of creative way into it. Yeah. So I remember reading of some experiments. They did some experiments on some poor kind of monkeys, where they wired up their minds so they could measure the dopamine that was released in the monkeys' minds. Yeah, and they gave these monkeys some sweet juice at certain times. And once they got the sweet juice, there was sense contact. There was pleasure. There was a kind of blip of dopamine that was released into their system. Pleasure. And then what they did was they, as they gave him the juice, a green light came on. Yeah. So they did that for a while. Green light plus sweet juice, pleasure. And then what they did was just the green light comes on. And they noticed that the monkey's sort of system released a little bit of dopamine, just a little blip of dopamine to have them kind of springing around. Like, where's the juice? Where's the juice?
Preconditioned.
Preconditioned, yeah. Yeah. So, and that's what we're like. Our minds work in exactly the same way. We're kind of wired that, you see something on your screen, it gives you a little blip of pleasure. It's like, oh, maybe this is it. Yeah. Or you see something and there's a little blip of pain. Yeah. We're kind of wired in exactly the same way. And, we're getting stimulated like that all the time. Yeah. So we live in a very high stimulation society. And we're getting kind of stimulated like that all the time, through maybe the media. We're walking down the street, we see an attractive person, there's a little blip of pleasure. We notice something on our phone or some kind of notification comes through. All the time, there are these little things triggering us in a little way. And we're kind of wired just to sort of want to automatically kind of follow it up. Yeah. And, what we're saying here is just try and notice that. Try and kind of open up a space of awareness. Yeah. So it's all about the importance of feeling and, reading with feelings in an emotionally intelligent way. So just being willing to sort of turn towards feeling with kindness and in a way not be frightened of feeling. I realise a lot of what goes on is there's a kind of subtle fear of my feelings. I noticed it this week, just in a small way. I was sort of hungry. I hadn't eaten very much for breakfast. I was kind of hungry, and there was a kind of anxiety about, when am I going to be able to eat something? And then a kind of fear of the feeling of hunger. But I was just a bit hungry. I was going to eat in an hour's time or something. Do you know what I mean? We can sort of have a kind of fear or anxiety about what we're feeling in a way which is just unnecessary. Yeah. I'm not saying ignore your feelings, just saying sort of turn towards them, kind of read them well, understand them better. Yeah. Okay, so last thing, and then I'll be quiet for a while. So I'm going to give you a teaching from the Buddha, which is a very, very practical teaching, kind of builds on this, relates to this. So this is the homework for the week in terms of the off the meditation cushion homework. And I will have some meditation homework for you as well later. And next week, I'm going to be away, but Moksha Darshan will carry on exploring this teaching with you next week. And I'll be back the following week. And it's called the teaching of the two arrows. Yeah? Quite a famous teaching of the Buddha, very, very helpful, practical teaching. So the Buddha said, sometimes something painful happens in life in a way which is unavoidable or uncontrollable. And it's like you've been hit with an arrow and it's a painful situation. Yeah. Of course, if you can get the arrow out, you would do that. But sometimes there's not always very much you can do, at least straight away. And the Buddha said, what we then tend to do in our minds is we go into a kind of, craving for it to be different and a kind of aversion towards the experience. Yeah. In a way, understandable because we don't want it. Yeah. But we may respond in a kind of unhelpful way. Yeah. So we might go into sort of self-pity. Oh, poor me, this always happens to me. Why? It's not fair. Why? Or we might go into resentment, or we might go into irritation. We go into some sort of story, some kind of narrative, which is a kind of resistance and repulsion towards the experience. Yeah. And the Buddha says that's like we add a second arrow. Yeah. We make it even more painful. Yeah. So in a way, it's a different way of saying what I was saying earlier, that there's something happens, it feels painful, then the aversion exacerbates the whole thing. Do you see what I mean? There's one arrow, and then we add to the second. And then the Buddha said, you can't always do something about the first arrow straight away, but you can always do something about the second arrow. You can always sort of watch, what am I doing in my mind? What story have I gone into? Is that helpful? Can I just sort of not do that? Just try and sort of relax and try and sort of accept the situation in some way. Yeah. So that's the homework, is to try and keep that teaching of the two arrows in mind. And just maybe notice situations in your week where something happens that's not welcome, and your mind goes into kind of repelling it in a way which just adds another layer of pain, and sort of amplifies it. And in a way, trying not to do that. Can I just sort of hold back from that? Can I just sort of breathe into it and not do that? And if I manage that, what happens? What happens to the whole situation? Does that make sense? Yeah. So trying to spot the second arrow, trying to see what it is that you do that is the second arrow for you. But, some people are, they blame themselves. That's their second arrow. Some people blame others. But, we have different kind of tendencies. Try and spot what you do as your second arrow. And what happens if you manage to kind of let that go? Does it feel better? Does it even change the experience first arrow a bit? Yeah, and it's less exaggerated. So that's the homework for the week. And then just one more thing that I really want to emphasize. This is not passivity. This is not just about being passive and sort of accepting things that shouldn't be accepted. It's about not reacting so that we can get in a more creative space so that we can respond in the most helpful way. Do you see the difference? Yeah. So it's not about kind of you just have to accept this. It's about not reacting. You get in a better space, then your creativity, your resources, your better resources will be more available to respond to whatever is going on. Yeah, that's really important.